Ashe family, welcome back to another episode of My Unapologetic Perspective. This is the podcast where we give our point of view of controversial topics from my experience, Black history, and our knowledge as African Americans. Black history presently lives in us so we can continue to excel into the future. It's one thing to know Black history. It's another thing to take advantage of what the people in Black history did for you. In the words of Malcolm X, there will come a time where Black people will wake up and become intellectually independent enough to think for themselves, and we are in that time period. I am your host, Martre Baker Stevens, and to the right of me is Shaquan Battle.
Happy Black History Month.
And to the right of him is Jerome Battle.
What's up?
We appreciate all the love and support we've been getting. The last episode got a lot of love and support. We really appreciate that. I got a question for y'all before we even start. Y'all think Black history is scaring white people?
Yeah.
I'm only asking that because it's Black History Month, and I'm not seeing it the way I normally see it. Like, white people used to post Martin Luther King quotes and Rosa Parks stuff, and now I don't even see that anymore.
I'm not even say it's just scaring them, because we know it's scaring them. We know that the woke concept is scaring a lot of white people, but I also think white people are starting to say, you know what? We keep talking about Martin Luther King, but everybody already knows about Martin Luther King, and they don't know enough about other individuals to talk about those individuals. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a lot of different reasons why, but I'm starting to think that they don't want to talk about the same ones, and they don't know any others.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's what it is.
We got another important topic to talk about today. Last week we talked about what woke really means, and a lot of white people disagree with us, and I had arguments with them and made them delete their comments. But needless to say, I think they got the point, especially when other Black people chimed in and said, "No, this is a Black concept, and this one of the things y'all need to understand."
I think it's always bad when we have a concept and another race want to tell us what it really means.
Yeah.
Right? We created the shit. We know what it means. You can't come in and try to take it like you did rap music.
Yeah.
Like they did this country.
So let's jump in. So today we're going to be talking about what does it mean to be pro-Black? Because I said this on a video a while ago, there's a lot of the comments said, why does everything always have to be about race? Why does everything have to be about Black this and Black that? And why is it always Black versus white? And why can't it just be everybody? I just want to get y'all points of views on how y'all view what being pro-Black means.
As Wale would say, sue me, I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Pro-Black to me is lifting up us, other Black people, spending Black dollars in Black owned businesses, impacting Black communities, and the most important thing is education in the Black community. Because what pro-Black is not is going around burning down businesses because it's successful in your community. What is not is burning down business because it don't belong to you. What it not is, pro-Black is not seeing a white man and beating him because he's not the same color of the skin as you. That's not what pro-Black is. Pro-Black is not hating another race.
Right.
It's not that. I
agree. Some people believe that being pro something means that you're anti something else. And in most cases, that probably holds true. However, if I'm a pro Philadelphia Eagles fan, that doesn't mean I'm anti Kansas City Chiefs. Right. Most importantly, it doesn't mean that I hate them or wish them any harm or ill will, or will conspire or facilitate anything unfair, unharmful against them. Mm-hmm. Pro-Black is not anti-white. Mm-hmm. And it's not anti anything that's non-Black. Pro-Black is really a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Right? It's encouraging awareness, which is what we did last week and what we've been doing for a couple years with this podcast. Education, along with economic and growth and development for Black people, Black communities, Black families. Pro-Black is not practiced or facilitated through hate or violence.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually the opposite. It's facilitated through love.
Yeah.
Love for Black people. Being proud of being Black and the accomplishments of Black people in this country that was built on racism,
Mm-hmm.
prejudice, inequality, violence, systems that practice it, people who benefit from it directly or indirectly.
Mm-hmm.
And then the use of that privilege to oppress Black Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Pro-Black is being a thinker, including people like Frederick Douglass, W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, Langston Hughes, people of that nature. That's what being pro-Black is gaining a voice, being seen. Ironically enough, Ralph Ellison, who wrote the book Invisible Man, talked about basically being Black in America.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, of course, Invisible Man became something completely different through the eyes of white Americans.
Mm-hmm.
But through Ralph Ellison's eyes, it was about being Black in America, being unseen, unheard, having no voice, being pro-Black in what we see in terms of having a voice, protest, perseverance, education, which is thus you get the civil rights movement and all the things that were attached with that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I agree, and I believe that a lot of people, again, they start in a series in season 8, episode 5, without understanding season 1, episode 1, and the things that come after it. You know, I think pro-Black is a counter from, and when you talk about, if you know Black history or you know the history of America, it's a counter because power, wealth was built off of white supremacy, right? And one thing that we were told was that we didn't have a history, that we were not able to obtain economic wealth, that we were not as smart as anybody else, that we couldn't develop certain things. And this is a counter to what that was. So when you look at what the Black Panther Party in general did after the Civil Rights Movement, where you had people like Stokely Carmichael come out and talk about Black power, a lot of people agreed, but they disagreed. Like, so for Dr. King, he agreed that Black power, he just didn't like the term being said that way because he thought it would be perceived a different way. And he was right, because Black power to them is more equivalent to the KKK with white power, right? But Black power to us is no, we're countering it against that to say that you're not supreme, right? That we're not underdeveloped the way that you would see. So Black power is more of a self-love type of thing. Black power is, again, supporting those Black businesses to understand our own worth and our own self-determination, to be able to pick ourselves up, because we're so far behind everybody else due to the history that we have to, one of the ways to catch up is for us to unify and support each other. So whether that's through businesses, whether that's through education, whether that's in politics, you just want that self-love. So treating Black people as a race the same way I would treat myself, right? Because I'm Black at the end of the day. And it's my perspective, and the way that I experience life is the way that things are going to change. It doesn't mean that I'm anti-white. Pro-Black that has nothing to do with them. I'm excluding them, and I'm focusing on Black people in general.
Right.
Why am I focusing on Black businesses? Because white businesses are already thriving. They've been thriving.
That's right.
Why am I focused on Black education? Because white education has been the norm. Why am I focusing on Black politics? Is because white politics have ran the country for 400 plus years, right? So we're focusing on Black because we're so far behind, and we're trying to develop something within ourselves to be able to do exactly what y'all complain about.
That's right.
Right? Which is have your own voice, like do your own thing. So if they was to take a black person and put him in a position in a white movie that was portrayed by a white person, white America gets into an outrage. But if we create our own, they say, well, what is the difference between, like, why aren't you allowing white people to come in and be in these roles? Because we have to develop our own. So we're doing exactly what it is that you complain about.
I agree. You know, when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, I'll give you a little history. 1863. The black community owned less than 1% of the United States' total wealth. More than 150 years later, that number has barely budged.
Mm-hmm.
The color of money pursues the persistence of this racial wealth gap by focusing on generators of wealth in the black community, where we own nothing, we control nothing. We not only do not have a seat at the table, but in most cases, in most communities, we're not even invited to the meeting. We don't even know when there is a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So in essence, there are 5 concepts regarding diversity. Because we want to be at the table, but being at the table is only providing diversity. So those 5 concepts, reducing the effects of racism, prejudice, and inequality in America, requires 3 to 5 things: diversity, inclusion, equality, equity. Thus you get normalcy. Diversity is being invited to the dance. Inclusion is being asked or allowed to dance. Equality is continuing to play music so we can dance. Equity is playing the type of music we like to dance to.
Mm-hmm.
And once you've accomplished those things, you created normalcy. And being pro-black is the process to get those 5 things. Without those 5 things, we could never own anything in our communities.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about own things in a community, we're talking about housing, business,
Mm-hmm.
economic development, financial opportunities, financial growth.
Mm-hmm.
These are the type of things, and of course, education. These are the things that you need as a black individual to be equal to your counterparts.
Mm-hmm.
These are how you, these concepts are the things that you need in order to have the growth within your family and in your community to be on what they call an equal playing field with our counterparts.
Mm-hmm.
So being pro-black means that we understand that, and we have to put that first. If that means that we have to create our own businesses and spend our money with those businesses, believe me, 1% of the United States wealth is not going to impact white America, not negatively anyway, right? So, and I know a lot of people think that means that we want to go back to segregation, because that's what a lot of people are going to misconstrue this concept. That's not what we're saying.
No.
What we're saying is, in order for you to have true integration, you have to have true integration.
Yeah.
And we don't have that.
No.
You have black communities that black people don't control anything about those communities.
Yeah.
So in order to have that, we have to own something. We have to have the same ability, the same opportunities that our counterparts have in order to be successful in that integration.
Because every other race does it.
That's right.
Right. You know, you don't go to Chinatown and you see black owned businesses there.
That's right.
Right. You don't go into a white gated community and see a black owned business there. But you go into the black community and every other race owns a business there except for a black person.
That's right.
Right. So when we talk about inclusion, that we want to control our own. We want to control our own politics. And what I mean by that is, black people want somebody in a political seat that black people want in a political seat. It's not a puppet for white America to put in a political seat to say, hey, he's black. This is the person y'all should go vote for. We need somebody that understands our community, that comes from our community and wants to give back to our community, not just a Republican or a Democrat that you put into a position just to say just because he's black, because that happens all the time. Even at your workplace, they always talk about inclusion or things that we have to have a certain amount of black people in position. I don't want you to put them in a position just because they're black. I want you to put them in a position because they have the capabilities to be able to do certain things for black people. Put them in a position to where they can hire more black people, right? So we look at that because we need to do that into our school systems, our jobs, and our everyday quality of life. And that's really what pro-black means. It's more of a self thing. And generally speaking, as you know, we just want to see black people be successful. I've never seen a caption on Facebook that says, you know, the first white person in some type of seat of authority. I've never seen a post where it says, so, you know, some white kid with the first educational achievement, because they've already established themselves, right? But we always see to this day the first black. The first black sheriff, the first black mayor, the first person in this political seat, the first black judge, the first black kid to get this type of degree. Like, we're still seeing the first black. So yes, as a black person, you want to stop seeing the first, because you want to be so in tune as a race that this is constantly happening to the point where it's normal. Because when you see first, it gives you off it's not normal. That it's not normal, right? And we want to see black people see. So even if I'm watching sports, right? If I see a black kid on a soccer team, I'm rooting for the black kid, right? Because, you don't see that. Even I'm watching tennis, we're rooting for the black people in tennis. Golf, we're rooting for the black person because it's not normal, and you want to make it normal, right? So we want to see our people succeed because they quick to point out our flaws. You know, when a young black man or black woman get drafted, they very quick to throw on the story that he came from a single parent home and don't know his father. But as soon as they come from a 2-parent home, they don't even pan the camera to the two parents that come from a black household. So yeah, we want to see our children succeed, and we want to see black people succeed because there's still stereotypes that we're trying to get rid of. So yeah, I root for people with their own businesses, even if they don't have their own building. I don't care if you're selling out the trunk of your car. Like, I'm rooting for you because we need more of that in our community.
Yeah, I'm smiling because those are some of the same points I was going to hit on, is that we're still talking about the first when it comes to blacks and certain things. The 13th Amendment, signed in 1865, abolishing slavery. Yet we continue to encounter instances of the first black to do something. All the way from the president to the first black NCAA ice hockey coach.
Yeah.
You know, the first, this is the one that's astounding. We just got the first black president of the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, that does more fighting for black people than any organization outside the NAACP in America. And we just got our first black president.
Yeah.
For that. The first black to win the Scripps National Spelling Bee. You know, we're still talking about the first, but just beyond that, because we talked about the wealth part, because the gap between whites and blacks obviously is just not education. It's just not socially, but it's also wealth.
Right.
We have our own trackers for black millionaires and billionaires.
Yeah.
That tells you it's not normal.
We can literally name them right now.
That's right.
And most of them are going to be rappers and ball players.
That's right. It's some type of entertainment.
Yeah.
You know, so we're having to do this because it's not normal. And again, to get the normalcy, we got to go back to those 5 things that I mentioned before in order to get that. And it starts with us being pro-black. We have to be aware of what's going on around us and how it happens. We have to be aware of it.
Yeah.
Like Wabu said, we got to put ourselves first.
Absolutely. And by putting ourselves first, we have to be black first. You know what I'm saying? Like, and what I mean by that is it goes back to the same concept we talked about last week, which is how our movements get hijacked because black people aren't putting their blackness first. They may put their sexuality first, and the black comes second. So now my sexuality and my blackness, now I'm part of this movement instead of the black movement. Right. And that hurts black people, right? You might put your religion before, you know, because that's one of the tactics to separate black unity is religion. It's always been religion if you look at slavery. You know, it's always been the Christian principles, because if you bring in Christian principles, it's always, well, God's children, God loves all his children, you know, but the same people who told you that concept are the same people who are benefiting from you believing in that concept, right? So why should my hell be on earth while their heaven is on earth, right? And a lot of times religion does that, because a lot of people say, you know, well, all God's children, God doesn't see race. Well, God may not see race, but in that religion, it is very, very clear who is ahead of everybody else when it comes to that religion. Now, I'm not telling you about your personal beliefs on what you believe in, how you see the higher power. What I'm saying is that religion has been used to hurt black people.
And most religions are going to try to interpret that chosen race based on their race,
right? Because you can translate those books the way you want it, the way you want to,
as to what race is being referred to as the chosen race.
Absolutely,
and that happens in predominantly every religion that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
And speaking of first, we also just got the first cardinal of the Catholic Church, the first black cardinal. Mm-hmm. So speaking of religion, so that again proves that there is racism and inequality in every aspect of what happens in America, not just America, but in this world, that race plays a part.
Yeah.
And we can even go back to the days of apartheid in South Africa, to where white supremacy took hold. And this country was built on, and you're going to hear me say that time and time again. This country was built on that, which means the systems that work this country were built on racism. And we can talk about the government. We can talk about the legal system. Mm-hmm. The Constitution itself was based on white supremacy that developed through the opposite of what pro-black is, which is violence. Pro-black is about love. Mm-hmm. Complete opposites.
And I'm glad you just said that, because one of the best example of that is the KKK, who went around just harassing and terrorizing anything that wasn't them. So mostly black people, right? And then what they tried to do in history was say that the Black Panthers were equivalent to the KKK. No. But what they leave out the part that it's the Black Panther Party of self-defense.
That's right.
And so it was the self-defense of that self-love and that self-development of black people. So anytime you attack us, and that's not just physically, you attack us mentally, you try to attack us emotionally, that's when we're going to defend ourselves, because that's what true pro-black is and what black power is.
That's right.
It's not hatred towards you. It's hatred towards anybody that hates us.
That's right.
It's hatred towards anybody that's doing harm to us.
Which at the time for Black Panthers, it was the police. It was law enforcement.
Yeah.
So if you watch the movie, even in the movie, it shows you that they actually went to the white neighborhoods, mm-hmm. who were also the target of law enforcement brutality.
Right. They were part of the Rainbow Coalition.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it was protection and monitoring of police brutality against the less fortunate.
Right? Yeah.
Not just black people, but the less fortunate. And so when it came, I think this is the irony of this whole conversation when we talk about Black Panthers. If you look at what happened with Tyree Nichols, where the cops were black, right? So when you watch the movie, it didn't call white cops, honkies, right? It called them pigs.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter what color they were. No. The fact that they wore the uniform and they were known for brutality against the less fortunate, right? So being pro-black is just taking that to another level, because even in situations where it involves a low-income white individual, they're still going to be treated differently by law enforcement than if that person was black, no matter what their wealth was. Right. So they're going to be treated differently. We see it every day in the news where you have wealthy black people, famous black people being discriminated against by law enforcement.
Yeah, because we don't just have a caste system, we got a social system too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. And we are back. We're going to jump right back in. I can get to my notes. And one of the things when we talk about being pro-black, again, it's always something you can relate to, right? It's relatable, because as a black person, you understand each other because you understand each other's experiences, right? You understand each other's adversity, and you understand each other's history because it's ultimately the same. So people who say that they don't see color, they're lying. you know, I see color. I read articles. I read statistics, related to color, and a lot of it remind us that black people are struggling. When you read these statistics and articles and news feeds, they said, when you have multiple kids, that you have to treat them differently based off their needs. And even as somebody who mentored in the community or coach in the community or whatever, I'm always going to treat the black kid differently. Mm-hmm. I have to because I understand the black kid's experiences. I understand the adversity that the black kid is going to go through. I relate more to the black kid. And black children are always going to get a different message from me because I am black. Not saying that the black kid and the white kid, that I can't give both of them 100% of my energy. But I'm going to give the black kid something different because I know his road is going to be a lot different. So I have to. So when I talk about being pro-black, it's like being a father. Mm-hmm. You love both of your kids, but you may have to get on the youngest one more.
That's right.
But is that to say that you love the oldest one more? No, but you understand his needs.
That's right.
And that your love may come off as being more. So when we talk about being pro-black, it's nothing against white people. When I say white people, and people confuse when we talk about white people and white supremacy.
All the time.
We are anti-white supremacy. Let's keep
right.
that. Let's just say we're not anti-white.
That's right.
I know some beautiful white people, lovely white people, great white people, but
even that sounds crazy.
Yeah, but black love is going to be different for me. Not just as it relates to history, but it's going to be different for me. The black family is going to be different for me. Like if I go to a graduation, I see a group of black people there to support a kid graduating, that's going to hit different for me because I know what it looks like when a black family doesn't show up at all. And I know the stereotype that's created in black history that says that the black family don't show up. So that's going to mean a little bit more to me,
I'm always amazed when people say they don't see color. And to me, that's the prerequisite just to say that I'm not racist, right? That's all that really means is that when you say I don't see color, because I think a lot of things has happened in this country based on the color of the individual. I'll tell you now, the reason that I'm a Las Vegas Raiders fan was based on something that happened to my favorite artist, Ernie Barnes. Ernie Barnes is the artist. If you watch Good Times and you see the paintings that JJ was painting, Ernie Barnes is the one who really painted those pictures. Ernie Barnes played college football. And at the time when they drafted players, a lot of times they drafted them based on statistics, based on numbers, right? They never really saw them play. Especially if they were black, because they weren't on TV like talking about it. And Ernie Barnes got selected by the Washington Redskins, and when they found out he was black, they descended his rights. And after that he developed a great relationship with the legendary coach of the Oakland Raiders, Al Davis, who Al Davis at the time was a coach of an NFL football team. And he ended up being the Oakland Raiders owner, which is how I ended up being a Raiders fan. But the fact that Ernie Barnes' draft rights were rescinded after they found out he was black happened a lot. There are some writers that wrote great things, and then when publishers found out they were black, decided they weren't going to publish them. Mm-hmm. And some of these people are people who ended up winning, like Alice Walker. She's the first black to win a Pulitzer Prize for a fiction book that ended up being the movie The Color Purple. So you had a lot of things that was decided based on people finding out after thinking that this person was great or that their work was great, was black, and then all of a sudden it discounted everything that they had achieved. Everything that you were interested in was based on your hope or thought that this person was white, and then when you found out they were black, like, oh, it's different now. Now it's not as great as I thought it was because you're black. So we've been discounted. Our accomplishments have been discounted because we're black, and that's happened throughout the existence of this country since it was invaded by what we call now white America. So when we talk about pro-black, as you said, this is a counter to all the things that has happened in this country and continue to happen on a daily basis, where we're constantly being discounted because of our color, simply because of our color. We see it when we watch the draft. We talk about it. They get a black person who's getting drafted, and they talk about him, and they hear this guy or female talk, and the first things commentators will say is, he's well spoken.
Yeah,
that's the first thing they say. But when they draft somebody white, you don't hear that. Why? It's not normal for black people to be well spoken. That's what they want you to believe.
for sure.
Right? It's not normal for a black person graduating before going pro, or after going pro to go back and get their degree. It's not normal because education is the thing that white people think black people don't want the most, right? We see it in schools. We see it in K through 12. When a black kid gets in trouble, the first thing they want to do is send you to an alternative school.
Yeah.
Right? We don't want to work with you. We don't want to find out what your problem is. Send them to alternative school. Get them out of here. Right? So it's, again, everything about us is discounted based on the fact that we're black.
Absolutely. Black unity has always been one of the biggest weapons, dangerous weapons against America. When you look at why they deported Marcus Garvey, somebody who had his own ship and was talking about black businesses and black people uniting. The assassination of Malcolm X, when you talk about his pro-blackness and getting into black politics and black businesses and black products and going into the Black Panthers, where those leaders were incarcerated or killed for talking about black organizations. They had black programs that white people took and used it for themselves for the rest of America. Right. It's always been a weapon. But if you were truly an anti-racist, you would actually promote pro-blackness, because it removes, again, the stereotypes or the statistics that or the flaws that goes against black America. So if you want to remove the myth of black on black crime, pro-blackness does that, because now you're creating black businesses and you're creating economic development within the community, and now violence is not a thing that's going to keep us from getting money.
That's right.
Right? The stereotypes of welfare, subsidized housing, unemployment. If you really wanted pro-black, then you will have more black businesses that be able to hire more black people and keep and allow them to have the wealth to buy their own homes and own their own land. And those things will get rid of those stereotypes or statistics that you put out. But it's those topics that white America is very loud about, but they're quiet about promoting black businesses. They're quiet about programs that's keeping black children from being incarcerated. They're quiet about the stop the violence movements that's happening within the community. You know what I mean? When black people began to rally for other black people, we support each other's business, educations against violence groups. When we allowed about unification, everybody else becomes quiet. Roland Martin had somebody on his podcast or his show a couple weeks ago, and it was a Republican, and it was talking about black on black crime and how black people are quick to fight for injustice. This was a black dude, quick to fight for injustice when a cop shoots somebody, but not quick to fight for injustice when a black person kill a black person. And, Roland asked him, what specifically do you do in the community? And he said, I do all of these other things in the community. He said, well, which community? And he was naming places. He said, and he was like, well, what do you do in those communities? He said, I lead, police to community. He said, well, what are you doing for the black community specifically? I don't want to hear police. I don't want to hear those. What are you doing for the black people? And he said, so if I call these people from these black communities, they're gonna know your name. Know you. And he was stuck because a lot of these people who say that they're doing things for black people aren't doing those things. But the true black people do live in that community, like a Jordan Bell, like us, like other people who are doing it quietly to create black wealth, to create black peace, to create black education. Those things are never going to be on the news.
That's right.
Right? So it is pro-black, but a lot of people don't know about it because everybody wants things to be all-inclusive, but black people have to worry about black people. We the ones that gotta deal with the statistics that you're going to put out.
That's right.
When the news come on and we're looking to see if it's a black person, we the ones that got to deal with that. You don't have to deal with that. So black unity is very, very important because, again, it removes a lot of those stereotypes when you really go deep into it.
We have to help remove some of those stereotypes because some of them are very true, and some of them is what's causing us a lot of the issues that we encounter in the black community. We are quick to support a black child that participates in a sport. You go to a sporting event for youth and you're going to see a lot of parents there, and slowly but surely we're starting to see a lot more fathers at these events than we did 15, 20 years ago. So we're starting to see a lot of parents coming. That's awesome. That's great. The problem is 2% in your community, less than 2% of those black athletes that you're going to support and watch are going to be successful in terms of education and anything beyond what's happening in your community. Right. Less than 2%.
For sure.
So you say, well, what's the difference? Is because what we're doing is we're relying on sports to keep them engaged in education.
For sure.
Right? That's what we're doing.
For sure.
We use things like cell phones, internet, friends, events, sporting, whatever it is, to force our kids to do well in school. That's what we do. So what kids do is they're smart enough to know as long as I try and I don't fail, I've accomplished my goal, which is I want to go play basketball. Which is I want to have the new iPhone. I want to have internet service. I want to be able to play video games. Whatever it is, they've accomplished that.
Right.
But what they have not done is learned a thing in school. I kid you not. I know people that graduated with me that cannot spell graduation. They can't spell graduation. I know grown people right now that graduated high school. Some even went to college. They can't tell you what's 10% of $100. So what did they actually learn? Right? I think I told Beck, I watched Tulsa King, and Sylvester Stallone gave a great example of what
sure.
graduating from college and getting the degree really means. It means that you went to a school for 4 years for the amount of time that you needed to get the credits that you needed so that you could get the certificate or diploma or degree, and you paid for it. That's what that means. Or you're going to pay for it.
You pay for it, and it showed that you're going to show up every day.
Absolutely. That's all that means, right? For most people. If you're not learning something, we need to start supporting our kids in learning. Not just going to school, not just doing their best so that they can participate in extracurricular activities, but they're actually learning something. I think it's our duty as black parents to stress that to our kids. Just going to school and not getting in trouble and doing the best you can is not enough.
Yeah.
It's not enough because we're already handcuffing our youth by telling them that. How many times have we told a child that, don't worry about it, the referees cost you the game.
Right.
Don't worry about it, they're older than you are. Right?
Right.
We're telling them something that's really not true to make them feel good.
Yeah.
Feeling good is not going to get you ahead in this world.
Right.
As a black American. Feeling good. They've given enough feel good shit already. We got Juneteenth Day. Y'all don't feel good about that? We have enough feel good shit already. Having them feel good is not going to be enough.
Yeah. And I believe that people have to understand that pro-blackness isn't asking for anything more than what anybody else got.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? It's just wanting us to get to that equal playing field as everybody else. We want our wealth up there. We want our education up there. We want our justice up there. And in order to do that, we have to unify, because it can't just be one person away from everybody else yelling this. We have to be a group to be able to do this.
right.
You know, but one of the things that's important is my blackness shouldn't make other people uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying? Unless me being black makes you uncomfortable.
That's right.
But I should be comfortable expressing myself with the way that I dress, the way that I style my hair, the way that I talk, the way that I when I talk, I should feel comfortable expressing my opinion and my perspective of how I feel and how I think. My wife tell me all the time, I'm telling you how I feel, not you shouldn't tell me how I should feel. I'm telling you how I feel.
That's
right? So how I talk is my perspective and how I perceive things. It shouldn't make you feel uncomfortable. Because if you feel uncomfortable with me expressing my uncomfortableness, then that goes back to why it is important to be pro-black.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So pro-black has nothing to do with hate. Pro-black has everything to do with that self-love. And I'm going to be honest with you, sometimes it's not always easy, right? Especially James Baldwin said it's hard to be black in a white society. Hard because you have to devote yourself to the standards of that society. So when you live in America, which is based off of white supremacy and white culture, that a lot of things that us black people do comes across as un-American, or they used to call it devilish or demonized, right? So being pro-black could be difficult in the world dominated by the white society. You know, we talk about how the people who are pro-black at home, but in public, they're not comfortable enough to show that. And I'm not mad at that. You know what I'm saying? Because there are people who are not comfortable with sharing our podcast.
That's right.
I can understand why. Because when you go to work, now you got to walk on eggshells around people for expressing your black opinion. You know what I'm saying? Because most of the times, likely, at your job, you may be the only black person, right? So the last thing that they want to do is be uncomfortable in a place where they are already uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the dominant society think that being pro-black is a shot at them, but it's not. You know, a lot of the people have fear of rejection from people who have done them no harm. So I don't expect every black person to be outspoken, because it is difficult sometimes to be pro-black in a world that's dominated by the white society.
And it's, the sad thing is because we're concerned with how it's going to be interpreted by white America. Once again, this is us putting white America first.
Yeah, but they don't care in the opposite.
Yeah, and the thing is Deion Sanders said something similar to what you said about when he says, when I speak, when I perform, I do it with confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let my confidence infringe on what you may believe or think, right? Because I'm so confident in what I do, all of a sudden it makes some people start questioning themselves about what they believe.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what happens, is because I speak so confident about being pro-black and being proud to be black, white people start questioning, damn, what have I been believing all these years all of a sudden?
Mm-hmm.
And that means their privilege could be threatened.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about this before. If you want to come up, what does that mean for me? Because they believe that we want to take something from them, and that's not true.
Yeah.
We just want our equal share. We want to be treated fairly.
For sure.
That's all we want. But because that means that their privilege is going to be dwindled. They know that.
Yeah.
Because now I'm not going to get the same benefit of the doubt that I used to get. And I like that. Even if I didn't ask for it. Right? You know? So, like I said before, if I have to live in a bully country, if I have to live in a country, I'd rather live in the country that's doing the bullying, and we do the bullying. And that's not anti-American. That's just anti-American way of thinking. Mm-hmm. That's anti-American policy. That's what that is. I'm not anti-American. I'm not anti-white. I'm anti-white way of thinking. I'm anti-American way of thinking. I'm anti-American policy.
Yeah.
And the only way we can overcome that is using those concepts that I talked about that are part of the lifestyle of being pro-black.
Absolutely.
You probably don't pay attention to it, but when you come to the kids' game, you ever notice the stairs because you got the beads on and the
For sure.
But my thing is, why do they try to make you feel uncomfortable for being pro-black when they wear the T-shirts with the rebel flag on it or the hat with the rebel flag
Because
on
if it's
it?
white, is right. Like that was one of the main concepts when coming to America is to get rid of what I was wearing.
Yeah.
To get rid of those symbolism. You don't want those symbols. You don't want them reminded of anything that's black and powerful. That's why I hate to say it, that's why they converted us to Christianity. We don't want y'all praying to them black gods and goddesses. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, that's why I wear it. I want you to look at it. I want you to see that I'm uncomfortably black. And then I want you to go over there and I want you to stand there and watch me while I dap up Anthony Cottrell and tell him, good game, bro. Because I'm not anti-white.
Right.
I went to school with this dude. I speak to his family.
I do got a question for y'all, though. And I've seen this question on many podcasts. The last one I watched, it got very heated between a man and a woman. A black man and a black woman is what the black man, his girlfriend was white. Can you be pro-black and date outside your race? Because I say this, right? We both got a mixed kid.
For sure.
You would have some people to say, what if she wanted to identify with her white side or his white side? Would you be against that? Would you be with that?
I'll let you go first.
Why? Do I think that you can be pro-black and be married to somebody outside your race?
Yes.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And it's ludicrous to think that you can't.
Right.
Okay? That's the same way that somebody black could be married to a racist. Mm-hmm. It can happen, right? Because at the end of the day, that person loves that person, not their race. Yeah. They just love that one individual, right? So in the case of being pro-black and be married to a white person, the only thing that would have to happen is that white person would have to understand that there is a distinct difference between the two of them and that they're going to be treated differently in certain situations. And they're going to take different sides and different arguments probably that happens on a regular basis. Right? But at the end of the day, they love each other and they understand those differences. And that's what it's really about. A lot of what we're doing when we talk about making people aware is we want people to be aware of the differences in how we're treated in certain situations, the differences in opportunities. And I'm sure any interracial couple, especially in southern states, have endured that at some point, whether it's going to a restaurant and having people look at them funny, or whether it's going into a store and having people look at them funny, or when they went to buy their home, having the finance company look at them funny, or who was going to be the primary when it came to those type of loans. And was there any discourse? Did the black male try to get the loan at first and they denied him, or it was a higher rate, and then they switched it up at another bank and all of a sudden they got approved and they had a lower rate? I'm sure there's a lot of stories that can be told about the differences. But at the end of the day, they love each other.
For sure.
That's what happens in a relationship. Now, I'm not going to tell you what their conversation's like when they watch police beat a unarmed black kid to death. I don't know what their conversation sounds like. But I'm pretty sure at the end of the day, that white person would have to understand why that black person will be so anxious, so upset, so hurt, and so moved by what took place. They have to understand that because there is a distinct difference, to the point that in certain states, just 50 years ago, they would probably never be able to get married.
Yeah, for sure.
So knowing those things and then educating the youth, because I agree. I think this is where it's going to be most difficult. And you guys have heard me say this before. I think Lyric and Keaton are going to have a difficult time in America. And we can talk about people not seeing color. And I hope in the next 10 or 15 years that happens, but I don't believe it. But the reason I say they're going to have a difficult time because they're going to get trouble from both sides.
Yeah.
You can get black people that's not going to accept them because they're biracial. I don't like to use that word mixed. And they're going to have white people that's not going to accept them because they're biracial.
Yeah.
So they're going to be on their own in a lot of situations. However, that can be an advantage. Now, you say, would you have a problem with them identifying as white? Here's the thing. identifying, I could say, hey, I want to be identified as white right now. We see it in sexuality, right? I don't identify as a male. I want to be non-sexual, right?
Right.
And you have all the support in the world in doing that. But if I said I want to identify as white, what's going to happen? You identify whatever the fuck you want to identify as. We're going to treat you based on what we see.
Right.
How do you look? Right? So if you look black, we're going to treat you black. I don't care what you identify as.
Yeah, race and colorism is two different things.
Absolutely. So identifying or attempting to identify, and let's talk about the legal responsibility in doing so. If you take your birth certificate anywhere and your parents sign it, and the father's black and the mother's white, what are you?
Black.
You're black. You can identify yourself whatever you want to, right? But when you go get that driver's license, they're going to identify you based on your appearance. So you can select white, but if you don't look white, you're going to have some proving to do.
Yeah.
You got to prove that, right? So I think they're not going to be, neither one of them look white. So they're not going to be able to identify white. My mom, who was very, very light complected, when she was a kid, she would be considered what they call a pass, that she would pass as white. They would cover her hair. She would go in the front of stores and buy things for my grandparents because she could pass as white. And my mom was very well-spoken, so they thought she was white. And as long as they didn't see her hair, they believed that she was white. She could pass. But at the end of the day, the minute that they found out she was black, she can't come in the front anymore. So it doesn't matter what you look like, doesn't matter what you think you identify as, you are black and you're going to be treated as such.
I'm gonna take a quick break for a second, then we're gonna come back because I don't want to go over the time. And we are back. All right, to get into your question, give me a little bit before I actually answer it.
I'll give you an example. Kim K and Kanye, right? They got married. Now that the money that they made together, whatever, now they get a divorce. Now people were saying that now, because what is Kim K, them Albanian or something like that?
White.
White. Is that black dollar? Well, I give you a better example, right? So I use you. Barisha is black, right? You can tell by the name. If you were sitting on this podcast doing everything that you do, speaking how you speak about the black women, all of this, but you went upstairs to a white wife, would that still make you pro-black?
Let me go somewhere, and then I'm gonna come back to that because it connects. I had a debate with the guy a couple years ago about religion, and he was trying to convince me that I was a Hebrew Israelite, and I don't subscribe to that book. So if I did, would I believe that? Yeah, but if I don't believe in that book, so therefore I don't subscribe to that. And I didn't condemn my man once we got done talking. I respected him only because at least he's looking for his blackness in that book. If you're gonna read it and you're looking for your blackness in there, good for you. That's still being pro-black. But my pro-blackness looks a little different. So can two things be true at once? Yeah, we're both pro-black. His way may just been a little bit different. We look at history, the civil rights movement, pro-black, looked a little different than the next movement, which was the Black Panther Party. It looked a little different than the Nation of Islam. It looked a little different from the Moors. But I believe all of them in their way was pro-black. And a lot of times in the black community, we have a problem with black people wanting to be the smartest in the room, the wokest in the room, the blackest in the room. Mm-hmm. There are people with more information about black history or black things than other people. But that doesn't make that person pro-black and the other people are not. There are people who are going to disagree with us on this podcast. It does not make us not pro-black. Just because they may be a little bit more in-depth or extreme in their beliefs. You're not going to find anybody in the world, or in black people in the world, at least 95% of us here in America, that checks all boxes of being pro-black. And what I mean by that is, we talk about support of black businesses and education system and politics. You're not going to find 95% of black people, and I'm just throwing that number out there because it's going to be the overwhelming majority.
That's right.
Does not vote for every black person on their ticket. Does not teach everything about black education. So if they go to a public school, that's not pro-black, right? Because you're being taught white education. If you shop anywhere other than black businesses, that's different. I just had to call somebody over here about my air pump. It was a white company. Does that make me not being pro-black because a white company came and fixed something for me? According to the black check boxes of people who claim to be the wokest or the most blackest, it is. So, to answer your question, no, there's no problem with it. I'm looking at the person's body of work. If that person is advancing the black community, if that person is giving back to the black community and not going against the black community and treating the black community as if it's beneath him, why would I have a problem with that? Now, what they do in their relationship, she has to understand his place of where he has to be for as a black man. But if she's in support of that, who the hell am I to say to go against it?
That's right.
That's their love. That's their relationship. The same thing goes for other pro-black people, because there are a lot of pro-black people that are like us. And what I mean by that, they go work for a white company. They answer to white bosses. They take white people's money.
That's right.
They call their car break down. They call in a white mechanic.
Doesn't make them any less.
It doesn't make them any less pro-black.
That's right.
But a lot of times when people get on the internet, they want to perceive as being the blackest. And a lot of them are not. Let's just call it what it is. A lot of people look the part. They wear the black clothing. They talk black. They dress black, and everything on social media is black, 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 black. But they work for a white-owned company.
That's right.
They put their money in a white-owned bank.
Doesn't make them any less
It does not make them any less pro-black. So a lot of times we have a problem with people who may do things just a little bit different. Malcolm X had to realize that. Dr. King did things just a little bit different. But when he met Martin, his mind changed. He's no less black than me. His experience is different. So for a man that wants to date a black woman, date a white woman, I have no problem with that. But he has to understand that there are going to be eyebrows raised, because there is a history that black men have to understand. The history is that the black woman feels like she's not good enough. Because if you watch the NBA draft and the NFL draft, every black man that becomes successful gets a white woman. Even if they were with a black woman to begin with, they stop and then they go get a white woman. How often do you see a man that was successful with the white woman leave the white woman and go get a black woman?
That's right.
Very rare, very rare.
Always the opposite.
Because if you go back in history, the white woman was the trophy.
That's the trophy. That's the prize.
You're not to touch a white woman. You not to look at a white woman. They'll put a white woman on every commercial back in the 50s and 60s. Black man, you can't have that.
The one thing you can't have.
That's the
How much
trophy.
money you have.
So black men have to look at it sometimes from a black woman's perspective to say they feel like they're not good enough. And does that help black progress? Absolutely, it does. But that doesn't apply to everybody. Because everybody's not with the white woman just because of the trophy. That's actually who they fell in love with. That's actually who gave them the support. That's actually who motivated them. Because a lot of black women, they have to look in the mirror too. Sometimes they're not the most supportive. Sometimes they're not the most productive. They're not the easiest to deal with. And some black men say, you know what? I'm gone. I'm out. So sometimes we just have to look in the mirror as black people and realize that every situation may be different. But it is a tactic of white America. That's another thing to understand. Undercover brother, right? What they said there? They sending a white woman to crush that black pride.
She devil.
Get the bejeebies out of here. It's funny, but that's what the man did.
Right.
Bring in the white woman to separate the black man from the unification of black power. So yes, it will raise eyebrows, and every black man has to understand that. But it's not always to the detriment of black people. Those people can still be pro-black in what they do. And again, going back to my daughter. My daughter is raised in a black household. Her values and her principles come from black people. I don't give a fuck how she identifies. She's always going to be black.
That's right.
If you listen to her talk, you would know firsthand that child been around black people.
That's right.
Because she is going to be that. And again, that we can go back to history and look at slavery or whatever. If you were mixed and they thought you were mixed, they considered you to be black.
She's going to be black. She's going to identify as black, and she's going to be proud.
And she's going to be pro-black.
Proud.
She's going to be pro-black. And that's another conversation, because they can identify even more because they're half that. And they understand that I don't even want to know parts of the white supremacy. That's why I'm pro-black.
That's the thing with Keaton is I know he identifies with the black side because his slang is black.
Yeah.
All his slang is just like his brothers and his sister slang. His slang is no different than theirs. But I close this time I read a quote. I wouldn't have to be pro-black if there wasn't anti-black first. I wouldn't have to teach my people to love themselves if they weren't being taught to hate themselves first. It's okay to be pro-black in a world that's anti-black, because if we don't take the time to value, empower, and love up on ourselves and each other every single day, then who will?
Love y'all. Peace.